Jalen wiped the sweat from his brow as he tightened the last bolt on the cargo module of the old freighter. The desert sun of Krylon 7 was relentless, baking the metal hull until it was almost too hot to touch. He had worked here for years, fixing abandoned ships and keeping the few remaining miners supplied, and he had long ago learned that patience, skill, and careful observation were more valuable than brute strength. Even so, the hours felt endless, and the quiet of the empty planet weighed heavily on him. He glanced toward the horizon where the jagged rocks met the orange sky. Something glimmered in the distance, a thin shimmer like heat waves, but more irregular. Curious, he squinted and noticed movement. Not the usual dust devils, something else, something alive. He grabbed his toolkit and made his way over, stepping carefully over sharp stones that could easily tear the soles of his boots. As he got closer, he realized it wasn't a creature he had ever seen before. A strange ship had crashed into the rocky plain, its hull twisted and scorched. Smoke rose in thin wisps, carrying the metallic tang of something unfamiliar. Jalen's heart pounded. He had seen plenty of crashes before, but something about this one felt different. Cautiously, he approached the wreckage. The ship's body was low to the ground, sleek and almost organic in design. Its surface shimmered with a faint iridescence like liquid metal. He reached out to touch it, noting the heat radiating from inside. Then he heard it, a faint groan, a soft, strained breathing. Inside the ship, Jalen found her. She was lying amid twisted metal and wires, her skin pale and glowing faintly under the dim lights of the failing vessel. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing a strange depth and intelligence that sent a shiver down his spine. He froze, unsure what to do. Warnings from stories about dangerous aliens, rogue pilots, and space ghosts ran through his mind. But instinct overrode caution. He knelt beside her and checked for injuries. Her body was fragile, her breathing shallow. Several cuts and burns ran along her arms, and she winced as he gently moved her to assess the damage. His hands worked with calm efficiency, improvising splints and makeshift bandages from the ship's materials. He could feel the tension in her muscles, the slight tremor of pain. Despite the strangeness, he did not hesitate. "Don't worry, I'll help you," he said softly. His voice sounded small in the vast silence around them, but the alien's eyes met his, sharp and watchful. She did not speak, only observed. There was an intelligence there, almost calculating, as if she were studying him as much as he was helping her. He worked quickly. He rigged a crude stabilizer using wires and circuits salvaged from the wreck. Sparks flew, and the smell of burning metal filled the cabin. She flinched slightly, but he ignored it, knowing that a moment's hesitation could cost her life. Finally, after what felt like hours, the ship's faint lights stabilized, and her breathing became more regular. "You'll be okay for now," Jalen murmured, stepping back to wipe soot and sweat from his face. He glanced around, realizing he had no idea what to do next. This was far beyond any human medical knowledge, and yet she was alive. He could see it in her eyes. She understood what he had done, though he did not understand her. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, musical, and completely unlike anything he had heard before. "Why?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I don't know," Jalen admitted. "I just couldn't leave you here. You needed help." Her eyes searched his for a long moment. He could feel a weight in that gaze, something almost regal yet hidden. She said nothing more, only closed her eyes again, letting him finish securing her injuries. Jalen felt a strange mix of relief and unease. He had saved a life, yes, but whose life? And why did it matter so much to him? By the time he finished, the sun had sunk low, casting long shadows over the rocks. Jalen looked around, realizing he had no way to transport her off the planet easily. The miners had a small shuttle, but it wasn't designed for emergency evacuations or alien patients. Still, he refused to leave her on the barren plain. He dragged her carefully toward his own small workshop, a patchwork structure of metal sheets and salvaged panels. Inside, he laid her on a soft mattress, covering her with blankets he had saved from old shipments. She stirred slightly, opening her eyes to watch him as he worked. Hours passed as Jalen checked her vitals, adjusted splints, and fashioned crude medical equipment from whatever scraps he had. He muttered to himself, explaining each step as if she could understand him fully. Perhaps she did. Her gaze never left him, intense and unwavering. Night fell over Krylon 7, and the workshop glowed dimly from a single lamp. Outside, the desert was quiet except for the occasional howl of a distant predator. Inside, two very different beings shared the same space. One a humble human with calloused hands, the other an alien whose presence radiated power even in weakness. Jalen did not yet know the extent of that power, nor did he realize that the simple act of saving her life had set in motion events that could ripple across the entire galaxy. By morning, she was sitting up slightly, her injuries stabilized. She spoke again, carefully choosing words he could understand. "You saved me. Why?" Jalen shrugged. "I don't know, I just couldn't let anyone die if I could help it." There was a pause, then almost imperceptibly she smiled. It was faint, mysterious, but genuine. "You have a kind heart, few like you exist." Jalen felt a warmth in his chest, a simple human pride, though he kept it modest. "I'm no hero, just someone who knows how to fix things." For several days, he tended to her, bringing food and water, cleaning her wounds, and making sure she rested. She rarely spoke, but when she did, it was with purpose, asking subtle questions about human engineering, culture, and morality. He answered as best he could, explaining life on Krylon 7, the miners, and the harshness of space life. It became clear that she was no ordinary alien. Her movements were precise, her insights sharp, and she seemed to know far more than any being stranded on a random desert planet should. Yet she hid it, always careful not to reveal too much. Jalen found himself fascinated, not just by her strangeness, but by the intelligence and calm determination she exuded even in vulnerability. One evening, as they sat near the window watching twin moons rise, she asked quietly, "Your species, you care for others even when it brings danger." Jalen paused. "I guess that's what we do. We look out for each other. It doesn't matter if it's dangerous. If someone needs help, we try." She regarded him silently for a long time, then she nodded almost solemnly. "Perhaps that is why I survived." Weeks passed. Jalen repaired the ship as best he could with her guidance, though he still did not understand much of the alien technology. She observed, offering advice without giving away her full capabilities. Sometimes she would touch a panel, and it would hum to life, lights dancing as if by magic. Jalen's respect grew, not for her powers, but for the calm patience and precision she displayed. Word of the crash eventually reached nearby settlements. Some feared the strange alien, while others wanted to profit from her presence. Jalen shielded her, explaining she was injured and needed safety. His human instinct to protect and care for the weak overrode fear or ambition. One day, while scavenging for more parts in the desert, Jalen stumbled across a small device buried under sand. It hummed faintly, pulsing with energy. He brought it back to her, curious about its function. She examined it and for the first time revealed a flicker of awe. "Where did you find this?" "Just under the sand. I thought it might help," he replied casually, unaware of the significance. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to be vulnerable. "You understand more than you know. Perhaps that is why you saved me." Jalen felt a strange thrill, a mixture of pride and confusion. He did not yet know the consequences of his actions, nor did he suspect the true scale of her identity. All he knew was that he had acted with instinct, skill, and compassion, human qualities he considered ordinary, yet which in this moment seemed extraordinary to her. As the days continued, Jalen and the alien, whom he now thought of as Lysera, formed an unspoken bond. He never asked who she truly was, and she never fully revealed herself. The hum of the desert, the flicker of lamps in the workshop, and the shared moments of quiet conversation created a fragile peace. And yet, in the vastness of space, Jalen's simple act of kindness had already begun to ripple outward. Unseen forces were stirring. Powers far beyond Krylon 7 dusty plains would soon take notice. But for now, he continued to care for her, oblivious to the fact that he had just saved the life of someone who would one day rule the galaxy in secret. In the silence of the night, as the moons cast silver light over the desert, Jalen finally allowed himself a rare smile. He had fixed ships, built machines, and solved problems, but this, saving a life, felt different. Somehow profoundly different. And he had done it not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Lysera, lying quietly on the mattress, watched him with eyes that hinted at both gratitude and curiosity. In her mind, she recorded everything: his humility, his cleverness, his unwavering dedication. It was rare, she thought, to encounter a being so small in the galaxy, yet capable of such greatness. For Jalen, it was just another day on Krylon 7. For Lysera, it was the moment a spark had been lit, one that could shape the fate of worlds. And neither of them knew just how far that spark would reach. The days after the crash blended into a quiet rhythm on Krylon 7. Jalen woke before sunrise, checking his tools and prepping his workshop for the day. Lysera remained on the mattress, observing him in silence, sometimes offering a word or two, but mostly watching. Her presence was like a calm tide in the desert, steady, powerful, and strangely comforting. At first, Jalen thought he understood her. She was fragile, injured, and dependent on him. But the longer she stayed, the more he realized he was only seeing the surface. Her eyes, sharp and observant, missed nothing. Every move he made, every decision, she seemed to silently note. One morning, as Jalen repaired a broken power conduit in the workshop, he realized Lysera had moved closer to the panel he was fixing. She didn't touch anything, only watched. "Do you want me to help?" he asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. She shook her head slightly. "I am studying," she replied, her voice calm and measured. "You improvise solutions in ways I did not expect." Jalen chuckled. "I guess I just fix things the way I know how. Sometimes it works." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer than necessary. "It works because of your mind, not because of tools or machines. Your species has creativity, uncommon in the galaxy." Jalen paused, a wrench in his hand. "Creativity, that's just what we do to survive, nothing special." Lysera smiled faintly. "Special. To survive this way, yes, your mind is remarkable." It was the first time she had given him anything that resembled a compliment. Jalen, unused to praise, shrugged modestly. "Thanks, I guess I just do what I can." Their interactions began to change subtly. Lysera no longer merely observed. She started asking questions, not about Krylon 7, but about human culture, human inventions, and human reasoning. "Why do you risk your life for others?" she asked one afternoon, as they watched the two moons rise over the rocky horizon. Jalen paused, thinking, "I don't know, it's just something we do. If someone needs help, we try, that's what matters." Lysera's eyes lingered on him, thoughtful. "Courage, humility, ingenuity, you have these. Few beings carry all three." Jalen frowned. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix ships, I'm not a hero." Her gaze pierced him, almost unsettling in its intensity. "Sometimes heroes are those who never think of themselves as such." Jalen shook his head and returned to his tools. He had never considered his daily work heroic. It was just survival, just problem-solving, just living. Yet, as Lysera spoke, he realized that his small acts, unnoticed and uncelebrated, had meaning beyond himself. One day, a distant rumble shook the ground. Dust rose in the air as a small patrol of mining drones passed near the workshop. Jalen waved them off casually, but Lysera's expression changed. "They detect unusual energy," she whispered. "They are coming closer." Jalen glanced at her, puzzled. "Energy, what do you mean?" She stood slowly, moving to a control panel that seemed too complex for him to understand. With careful precision, she touched symbols and a holographic map appeared, projecting in the air. Lines moved across it, ships, signals, trajectories. Jalen stared in amazement. "What is that?" he asked, awestruck. "My sensors, they detect movements in the surrounding systems," she said. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Threats or opportunities?" Jalen watched, trying to comprehend. "You mean you have a whole fleet tracking everything nearby?" She shook her head slightly. "No, not here, not yet, but I can sense signals, technology beyond Krylon 7. He swallowed hard, realizing there was much more to her than he had imagined. This was not a simple alien, not a helpless refugee. She was powerful, aware, and her reach extended far beyond this dusty desert. Days later, Lysera asked him to assist in repairing a small device she had salvaged from the wreck. It was unlike anything Jalen had ever seen, slim, glowing circuits woven in patterns that seemed almost organic. He examined it, puzzled. "I don't fully understand this," he admitted. She nodded. "You do enough. Your ingenuity is sufficient. You find solutions unexpected." Together, they worked. Jalen suggested rewiring certain circuits using a method he had devised for mining drones. Lysera hesitated at first, but allowed it. When he flipped the final switch, the device came alive with a soft hum, responding perfectly to his adjustments. Her eyes widened briefly. "You adapt faster than expected. Few in the galaxy do this." Jalen grinned. "I guess I just think differently. You don't always need complicated tech to solve a problem." She looked at him with a mix of curiosity and respect, something almost like admiration. Jalen didn't fully understand her reaction, but he felt a strange sense of pride, the kind that didn't require recognition or reward. But the calm did not last. One evening, as the two watched the twin moons, a distant flare appeared in the sky, a small, fast-moving ship approaching the planet at high speed. Jalen's heart sank. Krylon 7 wasn't a safe place for strangers, especially ships from outside. "They approach," Lysera said softly. "Unfriendly, perhaps, but not yet clear." Jalen scrambled to prepare. Using spare materials, he rigged warning lights and improvised a signal flare system. Lysera observed, offering advice in her quiet, measured way, guiding him without revealing the full extent of her knowledge. The ship descended rapidly, kicking up dust as it touched down not far from the workshop. A group of humanoid figures emerged, clad in dark armor and carrying advanced weapons. They were pirates, or so Jalen thought, but there was something calculated, precise about their movements. Lysera stepped forward, her injuries mostly healed now, though she still leaned slightly on Jalen for support. "Do not engage recklessly," she said. "Observe first, adapt." Jalen nodded, feeling both fear and determination. He was just a human, but he had survived worse odds before. He knew the desert, his tools, and his wits were his advantage. The pirates advanced, scanning the workshop. They paused, seemingly puzzled by the technology and the structure. Jalen flicked a switch on a device he had rigged earlier, a small electromagnetic pulse emitter salvaged from old mining equipment. It discharged with a crackle, sending their scanners into temporary chaos. The pirates cursed and adjusted, but Jalen had already prepared another distraction, a series of small automated drones he had built to patrol the perimeter. They whirred to life, forcing the intruders to dodge as the drones swooped and buzzed around them. Lysera watched silently, impressed by his quick thinking. "Your instincts are remarkable," she murmured. Jalen felt a rush of adrenaline. He moved with calm precision, using every tool at his disposal to protect the workshop and, more importantly, her. The pirates were experienced, but they were not prepared for his ingenuity, for the unexpected ways he could manipulate machines, terrain, and timing. After tense moments that felt like hours, the intruders finally retreated, leaving behind confusion and damaged equipment. Jalen breathed heavily, wiping sweat from his brow. Lysera approached, her expression unreadable but her eyes glowing faintly. "You saved both of us," she said softly. "Not through strength but through mind, creativity, courage, humility." Jalen shrugged. "I didn't think about that, I just did what had to be done." Her gaze softened. "This is why I survived. Few beings would act without hesitation. You acted instinctively for others." In the days following the encounter, Jalen noticed subtle changes. Lysera began sharing more about her knowledge, not revealing her true identity, but teaching him concepts that seemed far beyond human understanding. Together, they experimented with energy conduits, improvised propulsion systems, and makeshift defense mechanisms. Each day, Jalen learned more, adapting her teachings with his own ingenuity. One afternoon, she asked him to examine a small alien map etched into a thin, metallic sheet. The lines shifted subtly as he touched it, responding to pressure and heat. He traced a route between several star systems, trying to comprehend what it represented. "Your species interprets space differently," Lysera said. "You see possibilities others overlook." Jalen frowned, turning the map in his hands. "I just try to think of solutions that work, that's all I know." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "No, this is rare, uncommon, valuable. You have potential greater than you understand." For the first time, Jalen felt the weight of her words. He was just a human, small in the galaxy, but somehow his simple acts of ingenuity, observation, and courage were noticed, appreciated, and respected. As night fell, he sat near the window, watching the moons cast silver light over the desert. Lysera joined him, leaning back as though contemplating the stars. They were quiet, yet their silence spoke volumes. In that quiet moment, Jalen realized something profound. He may have been humble, unassuming, and ordinary in the eyes of the galaxy, but to Lysera, his human traits, humility, courage, ingenuity, were extraordinary. Perhaps, he thought, that was what made humans capable of greatness in ways no one could predict. And Lysera, the alien he had saved, the one who remained a mystery in so many ways, was beginning to trust him not just with her recovery, but with secrets he could not yet understand. He had no idea of the galaxy she ruled in secret, nor of the challenges that would soon arrive. But one thing was certain. The bond between them had grown, forged in trust, respect, and human determination. Unseen by Jalen, distant observers, ships far beyond the systems he knew began to take notice. The ripple of his actions, small as they seemed on Krylon 7, had begun to spread. Human ingenuity, humility, and courage were becoming forces in ways the galaxy had never predicted. And as Lysera quietly studied him, she realized that the human before her, the one who had rescued her without question, might be far more important than she had ever imagined. The spark was lit, and the galaxy would soon feel its warmth. The quiet days on Krylon 7 had come to an end. A ripple of unease moved through the desert winds, almost as if the planet itself sensed what was coming. Jalen had just finished reinforcing the workshop's outer walls when Lysera spoke, her tone calm but urgent. "They are coming," she said. "Far but fast, forces hostile. They have learned of my vulnerability." Jalen paused, wiping dirt from his hands. "Who? What do you mean?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pointed to a device he had helped repair, a small alien sensor that now pulsed softly with energy. On its projection, a fleet of ships moved steadily toward Krylon 7. Sleek black, armed with weapons that radiated a cold, hostile energy. "They know I survived the crash. They seek control or destruction." Jalen felt a chill run down his spine. He had never imagined that saving someone could draw such danger, and yet here it was. A fleet of strangers, armed and intent on violence, was on its way. He looked at Lysera, seeing not fear but focus in her eyes. "What do we do?" he asked. "We prepare, but carefully," she said. "Your skills, your mind are valuable. We must act together." Jalen nodded, understanding more than he had before. He was a human, a simple engineer in the vastness of the galaxy, yet Lysera trusted him to help defend against powers far beyond his world. And despite the fear gnawing at him, he felt a surge of determination. He would not fail. Over the next hours, Jalen worked feverishly. Using scrap metal, spare wiring, and old mining drones, he built a series of defensive mechanisms around the workshop. Small energy traps, motion-activated turrets, and electromagnetic pulses were all rigged to respond automatically. Lysera guided him, her instructions precise and clear, but she allowed him the freedom to improvise. "You think differently," she said, watching him solder a conduit that would reroute energy to a hidden pulse emitter. "Most beings rely on strength. You adapt, you create." "I just do what works," Jalen replied, focused on his work. "It doesn't matter if it's small or big. If it stops them, it's enough." Lysera tilted her head slightly, as though studying him for a long time. "Enough for now, but soon it will matter far beyond this planet." Night fell, and with it came the first wave of intruders. Jalen could see them descending from the horizon. A group of scouts, moving fast and silent, advanced beyond any patrol he had encountered. They scanned the terrain, their sensors sweeping for life signs. "They expect weakness," Lysera whispered. "They do not know human ingenuity." Jalen felt a spark of pride at her words. He didn't think of himself as extraordinary, but she saw something in him, something more than skill. Courage, creativity, the will to act without thinking of reward. He moved through the shadows, activating devices, leading the intruders into traps he had set. The first scout fell victim to a simple but effective energy net, its circuits overloaded by a pulse Jalen had designed. He ducked behind a rock as another intruder approached, then flipped a switch, activating a set of drones that whirred to life, forcing the enemies to retreat momentarily. Lysera's presence beside him was steady, guiding him silently, but allowing him to take the lead. Hours passed in tense silence, punctuated by bursts of controlled chaos. Jalen realized that his simple, human solutions, drones, pulses, traps, were more effective than the intruders had expected. They were not prepared for improvisation, for unexpected strategies born of instinct and observation. At one point, a large intruder ship landed near the workshop. Jalen's heart pounded as he assessed the situation. Its weapons were powerful, capable of destroying the workshop in moments. But he noticed a flaw, a blind spot in its sensors, a gap that could be exploited. Using a combination of mirrors, reflective panels, and a small pulse emitter, he created a distraction that confused the ship's targeting system long enough for it to take off without striking the workshop. Lysera observed silently, almost in awe. Few in the galaxy could do this, she murmured. Few beings act without fear, yet with such clarity. Jalen shook his head, exhausted. I'm just trying to survive and protect what's here. Her gaze softened. This is why I trust you. You do not seek power, only action. You are rare. The intruders retreated, regrouping on distant terrain. Lysera projected a map showing their paths and movements. They will return stronger, but we have time if we prepare carefully. Jalen nodded, looking at the device she had repaired. His mind raced, thinking of new traps, new defenses, ways to use the terrain, the drones, and his own understanding of machinery to counter forces far superior in size and firepower. He realized in that moment that being human, small, underestimated, and overlooked was exactly what gave him an advantage. No one expected a single engineer to outthink an entire squadron. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly. Jalen modified drones to carry small explosives, rerouted power from abandoned generators to fuel makeshift shields, and set up communication signals to mislead the intruders. Lysera contributed knowledge of alien technology, energy manipulation, and subtle tactics, but always allowed Jalen's ideas to guide the final solutions. Together, they were a formidable team, a balance of human creativity and alien insight. Despite the danger, Jalen found a strange sense of satisfaction in the work. He had never been a hero, yet here he was, shaping events on a scale far beyond his world. And Lysera, the alien he had saved, seemed to recognize that he was more than he thought himself to be. One evening, as they rested after a long day, Lysera spoke quietly. Your species has strength unseen, not in weapons or armies, but in mind, in courage, in spirit. Jalen looked at her, confused. I'm just a mechanic, I don't know about strength. She reached out, her hand brushing his shoulder gently. Strength is not size or power alone. You save lives, protect others without thought of reward, without fear. That is strength. He felt a warmth he had never experienced before. Her words were not praise in the ordinary sense. They were recognition, understanding, and respect. He had never thought of his simple acts as powerful, yet to her, they were extraordinary. The following day, the intruders returned in full force. Their fleet was larger, armed with heavy weapons and advanced tactics. Jalen watched the horizon as the first ships entered the desert sky, feeling both fear and determination. He had spent days preparing, improvising, and learning from Lysera. He would not fail now. As the battle began, he moved swiftly, activating traps, rerouting energy, and directing drones with precision. Lysera coordinated from the control panel, guiding him and subtly manipulating the environment. Every plan he improvised seemed to work. Every trap he set slowed the enemy. Human ingenuity, coupled with alien insight, created a defense the intruders had not anticipated. At one point, a large energy beam struck near the workshop, shaking the ground and sending debris flying. Jalen ducked, then noticed a blind spot in the intruder's targeting system. Using a combination of mirrors and reflective materials, he redirected the energy back toward their formation, causing confusion and forcing retreat. Lysera watched silently, impressed but careful not to reveal her astonishment. Hours passed. The intruders were relentless, but Jalen's clever solutions, adaptability, and courage kept them at bay. His human mind, small in the eyes of the galaxy, was reshaping the battle through creativity, foresight, and instinct. Finally, as dawn approached, the intruders withdrew, their forces scattered and frustrated. Jalen collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved. Lysera approached, her expression calm but proud. You have done more than most in the galaxy could, she said softly. Your mind, your heart, they shape events far beyond Krylon 7. Jalen shook his head, still catching his breath. I just did what I had to. That's all, her eyes glowed faintly in the early light. No, that is enough to inspire change, enough to shift fate. You are extraordinary not because of power, but because of who you are. For the first time, Jalen understood something profound. He had always thought of humans as small, ordinary, and powerless in the vast galaxy. Yet his actions, simple, humble, and instinctive, had changed the course of events, saved lives, and even impressed an alien whose influence spanned star systems. Lysera stood silently beside him, her presence a reminder that the galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of mysteries. But she had chosen to trust him, and together they had turned the tide of a battle far beyond the scope of one planet. Jalen realized then that being human was not a limitation. It was a strength. Humility, ingenuity, courage, and compassion were forces that no technology, weapon, or fleet could fully predict or counter. And as he looked at Lysera, he understood that his place in the galaxy, small, unassuming, yet powerful in his own way, was just beginning. Beyond Krylon 7, the ripple of his actions was spreading. The intruders would regroup, new threats would arise, and the galaxy would test him further. But Jalen now understood something that would guide him through every challenge. Human creativity, heart, and courage could shape even the fate of stars. And Lysera, who had survived because of him, had begun to see that humans, ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in spirit, might just be the key to something far greater than she had imagined. The desert of Krylon 7 lay quiet once more, but the galaxy was changing. A humble human engineer had proven that courage and ingenuity mattered, that even the smallest actions could have cosmic consequences, and that the heart of humanity could shine brighter than any star. The desert of Krylon 7 had quieted once more, but the tension hung in the air. Like the heat before a storm, Jalen had spent weeks preparing defenses, improvising solutions, and learning from Lysera, whose calm guidance had been both steady and inspiring. But neither of them could ignore the approaching fleet. This time, it was larger, faster, and more dangerous than before. "They are coming in force," Lysera said, her voice calm but her eyes sharp. "They intend to take control or destroy everything." Jalen looked toward the horizon. Tiny lights glimmered in the distance, growing brighter as the fleet advanced. "We're ready," he said, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. His hands itched to work, to create, to improvise, but the stakes were higher than ever. He knew this time failure was not an option. Lysera rose from the control panel, her injuries fully healed but her presence commanding. "You will act with courage and wit. Your mind, your heart will shape the outcome." Jalen swallowed and nodded. He had learned that fear was natural, but it could not guide his actions. He would rely on instinct, ingenuity, and the small but crucial tools at his disposal. As the intruders descended, Jalen activated his improvised defenses. Drones took flight, energy traps hummed to life, and pulse emitters lay in wait. Each device had been carefully tested, modified, and recalibrated. Lysera observed silently, occasionally offering precise adjustments, but leaving him to take the lead. The first ships approached, sleek and black, weapons glinting in the dim light. Jalen ducked behind a rock, activating a mirror system he had rigged to confuse their targeting sensors. The beams meant to strike the workshop reflected back, forcing the intruders to adjust and giving them precious seconds to respond. "Impressive," Lysera murmured, her gaze fixed on him. "Few would think of this." Jalen worked quickly, his mind a whirlwind of calculations and possibilities. He directed drones to intercept small scout ships, rerouted power from abandoned generators to reinforce pulse emitters, and triggered concealed traps that sent the intruders scattering. Every action was calculated yet improvised, a combination of careful planning and instinctive problem-solving. One of the enemy ships managed to land near the workshop. Its massive engines kicked up dust and rocks, shaking the ground. Jalen froze for a split second, then saw a weakness, a structural blind spot in its hull. With a combination of reflective panels, energy pulses, and precise timing, he redirected the ship's own energy against it. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the vessel staggered back into the sky, retreating in confusion. Lysera stepped forward, placing her hand on a console. "You are extraordinary, not for strength, but for mind and courage." Jalen felt a strange warmth at her words. He had never considered himself extraordinary, only competent. Yet here, in the heat of battle, his simple human ingenuity was shaping events that could decide the fate of the galaxy. Hours passed in tense chaos. The intruders regrouped, attacking in waves, but Jalen adapted faster than they could anticipate. He used the terrain, his tools, and the drones he had built to outthink them at every turn. Lysera guided him, revealing subtle knowledge of energy patterns and alien tactics, but always letting him apply his own reasoning. Together, they formed an unstoppable combination: human creativity and alien insight. As the battle reached its climax, one of the intruder commanders, a massive warship bristling with weapons, moved directly toward the workshop. Jalen's pulse raced. This ship could destroy everything he had built in moments. Lysera spoke, her voice steady. "Do not fear." Use your mind, your heart, and act. Jalen surveyed the battlefield quickly, noting weaknesses, energy flows, and blind spots. He realized that a single, decisive move could tip the balance. Improvising, he combined all his tools: drones, pulse emitters, reflective panels, and energy conduits. He activated them simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of defenses. The warship fired and the beams struck the traps. Energy reflected, pulses disrupted systems, and drones swarmed in precise patterns. The intruders were caught off guard, their coordinated attack collapsing under the unexpected combination of technology and human ingenuity. Lysera watched, her eyes glowing faintly. You are more than I imagined. Your courage, your mind, your heart, these are forces no one can predict. The warship faltered, then retreated. The remaining intruders, witnessing their leader's failure, pulled back as well, disappearing into the horizon. Silence fell over Krylon 7, broken only by the hum of remaining drones and the desert wind. Jalen sank to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. He had done it. Against overwhelming odds, he had used his human abilities, thinking, adapting, and caring, to defend the alien he had saved. Lysera approached him, her expression serious but calm. You have done more than any being in the galaxy could expect. Your actions saved many lives and shaped events beyond this planet. Jalen shook his head. I just did what I could, that's all. She smiled faintly, a light that seemed to brighten the room despite the dim desert night. No, that is enough to inspire change. Enough to alter fate. You are extraordinary not for power, but for who you are. Jalen felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of pride and humility. He had always thought of humans as small and ordinary, but Lysera's words revealed a truth he had never considered. Courage, ingenuity, and compassion were strengths that could shape the galaxy itself. Then she revealed the truth, her voice calm but firm. I am not merely an injured traveler. I am Lysera, ruler of the galaxy, though few know. I survived because of you. Your actions, your mind, your heart saved me, and my empire may owe its future to a human. Jalen froze. He stared at her, disbelief and awe mixing in equal measure. You ruled the galaxy, she nodded. In secret, hidden to protect and to observe, few beings know. Yet you acted without knowing who I was. That is why I trust you completely. He swallowed, trying to process the revelation. The human who had thought of himself as small, insignificant, and ordinary had just saved the ruler of the galaxy. And she trusted him not because of force or fear, but because of his character, his ingenuity, and his courage. Lysera extended her hand. Jalen, your species is underestimated by many in the galaxy. Yet you have shown that humanity has potential to shape stars and fate. Jalen took her hand, feeling a connection beyond words. I'm just a mechanic. I've done what I could, that's all I know. No, she said softly. What you do matters far more than you know. You are extraordinary not for power, but for heart and mind. The two stood together, looking at the horizon where the last intruder ships disappeared into the distance. Krylon 7 lay quiet once more, but the galaxy beyond was changing. Jalen's ingenuity, humility, and courage had not only saved lives on this small desert planet, but had also influenced events far beyond what he could see. Lysera spoke again, her voice carrying both authority and warmth. I grant you honorary command of a fleet to explore, protect, and learn, not for glory, but because the galaxy needs minds like yours. Jalen blinked. A fleet, me? I don't know if I'm ready for that. You are ready, she said firmly. Not because of training, but because of who you are, humble, clever, courageous, compassionate, human. For the first time, Jalen felt the weight of his actions fully. Saving her, improvising solutions, thinking creatively in the face of danger. It had all led to this. A humble human, small in the eyes of the galaxy, had proven that courage and ingenuity mattered more than size, strength, or firepower. As the twin moons rose over Krylon 7, casting silver light over the desert, Jalen realized something profound. Humans, underestimated and overlooked, could shape events far beyond their world. They could protect, innovate, and inspire in ways no one expected. And he, one humble engineer, had done just that. Lysera stood beside him, silent for a moment, then spoke with a quiet smile. The galaxy will remember that sometimes one human can change everything. Jalen laughed softly, shaking his head. I never thought I could matter this much. You do, she said simply. Not for power, not for recognition, but for courage, ingenuity, and heart. That is why humans are extraordinary. The desert lay quiet once more. Krylon 7 had survived, the intruders had been repelled, and the galaxy had witnessed, without knowing, the quiet brilliance of a humble human engineer. Jalen had saved a queen, defended a planet, and shown that even the smallest beings could alter the course of empires. And as he looked at Lysera, the alien he had saved and now stood beside as a trusted ally, he understood the truth of her words. Humanity was underestimated, yes, but underestimated humans could achieve the impossible. They could shape the stars, protect the vulnerable, and change the fate of galaxies. Jalen felt a sense of peace he had never known. The battles, the improvisation, the fear and courage, it all led to this moment. He had acted without thinking of reward, and yet the universe itself seemed to acknowledge his worth. Lysera placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Rest now, for soon the galaxy will need more of what you offer. Jalen smiled faintly, looking out at the horizon where the first hints of dawn were breaking. He thought of Krylon 7, of the desert wines, of his small workshop filled with tools and drones. He had always believed he was ordinary, but now he knew courage, ingenuity, and heart were forces that no one could ignore, not even the vastness of space. The galaxy awaited, and Jalen, the humble human engineer, would meet it with the quiet brilliance that only a human could bring. And for the first time, he felt truly ready.